I have no formal degree in data science. I come from civil engineering, did a data science bootcamp, and yet, even before finishing that bootcamp, I got hired at my first role. In this video, we're going to talk about the exact steps I took to make that possible. What is up? If you're new to this channel, the name's Kevin, and I'm about to just give you a bit of the backstory before we talk about how I did what I did. So I started off in civil engineering, and long story short, did not enjoy the company, the work, or the work culture. I decided to resign from my full-time role to do a data science bootcamp. Now, I know, pretty risky, right? Now, this data science bootcamp, a bit of context, it's about a 7-month program at the time. It's changed a bit now, but a 7-month program at the time. This bootcamp was structured into what we call sprints. So if you're aware of agile-based project management, sprints, when we call it sprints, they just try to mimic real-life project work. And this was also fully remote bootcamp program, so making it a bit harder to network. Now, just rewinding back to orientation week, we had a very good onboarding process. One of the things that really stuck with me at the time was a few words our success manager said. They said, it's very important for us as the staff to get to know you in order to get potential roles or referrals. And that statement, I think for that entire week, that statement stuck with me for the rest of the program. So based on what my success manager said at the time, I decided to, besides doing my coursework diligently, trying to get the best marks, I decided to take on this personal journey, well, of what I'd like to call building my brand points or personal brand points, and what that looked like, right? And I'm going to talk through 4 points of what I did, and I think this will explain what I was trying to achieve. But now remember, I said that this was all virtual, and once we had contact sessions, maybe webinars explaining a new concept, most of the students' cameras were off. We just had our facilitators at the time with their cameras on, most of the time. So I'd say a handful of students had their cameras on, and I decided to be one of them. So at every webinar, I had my camera on. The second point is, besides the coursework and these contact sessions, we had what we called at the time weekly pod sessions. So let's say it was a cohort or a student group of 100 students. We were divided into smaller groups of, about maybe 10 to 20 students. And we had weekly group sessions of just catching up with this small group. And what I did in those sessions was always attended them. Not everyone did attend. I always attended them with our facilitator, and I always remained active in those sessions. Maybe a bit of context into what a facilitator actually is or was, is that in this maybe group of 100 students, each facilitator took on about, I'd say, 25 students, and they were your go-to person for any problems you had, questions you had about the course, questions you had about maybe a technical concept, just your person, that your point of reference during your course phase. So now with me being me and trying to build my brand points, what I did was I made an effort to get to know my facilitator on a personal level. And you'll see how down the line, just how that really helped me in this process of getting my role before finishing this bootcamp. Just as a final point number 4 of me building these brand points, remember we spoke about the webinars, and these webinars consisted of the entire student group. So we're using 100 students as an example. But what I did during these sessions was, at the end, there always came a time where the presenter said, do you have any questions for us? And I always made it a point that even if I did not have a question at the time, I just quickly think of something and I asked the question. And what that did was, outside of my facilitator, I made sure that the other facilitators in the cohort, so the whole staff group, got a chance to know my name. Now, one thing, with all that being said of building the brand points, I made sure I did this consistently for, each month that passed. And now by about the 4 to 5 month mark in this program, We had about 2 months left, and I decided, okay, now's a good time to start updating my CV, to start opening myself to the market. And at this point, I had established a good relationship with my facilitator. So I actually reached out to them, had a one-on-one call, and just asked them for resume tips, job searching tips, etc. And this was a good call to have because they said, why don't you apply to work at this company? And I was like, interesting. And they said, you know what, I'll even throw in an extra bonus feature for you, and that is I'll write you a recommendation letter. And so they did that. And now with that recommendation letter, I went on to get my resume done with the tips that my facilitator gave. I did my cover letter and I applied. And this was in November. No, I think early December of 2021. Then I think I got my first interview during that December period. The festive break was a company shutdown. Came back in January. I think I did 2 more interviews, including one with the CEO. And I think by mid-January of 2022, I had then received an official offer from Explorer I. And remember, my bootcamp was scheduled to end by the end of February. So this offer came through before my bootcamp actually ended. You can just imagine how happy I was at the time. Honestly, one of the happiest moments of my life. But now, if you did find any of that, of me sharing my personal journey, helpful, do consider subscribing to this channel because I share these stories all the time. But anyway, during the process of all this that transpired, I had learned some important lessons during that time. Number one being that your work doesn't always speak for itself. You always have to speak for it. And my work was in a good state. I had received a black belt, so that's like the highest level of, well, they use belt colors to like rank your performance in the course. But I believe what actually got me the job was building a relationship, letting me speak for my work with the staff. And that's how I landed that job. Lesson number 2 was that networking can be quite a powerful tool, even in an internal setting. And when I say internal, I mean not just outside your company, outside your workplace setting, but I did that internally. I got to know my students, I got to know my staff, networked with them, and that can be a powerful thing even in a remote setting. Lesson number 3 is the concept of being proactive. And I know that shyness can get in the way of being proactive, but this is a skill that can be learned and can be mastered. So at the time, for example, I decided to reach out to my facilitator who I hopped on a call with. And if I did not do that, I would not have gotten that recommendation letter. So being proactive is something to think about. Which brings us to our 4th lesson. And that is when you're starting out a process, a bootcamp, a learnership, some sort of talent program, don't wait for the finish line before making your moves. I'd say start early, start at the halfway mark, because it's a process of learning, making the mistakes and updating, curating your process. And by the time you finish, you've either landed your role or you've learned the skill set in order to land that role. So now you know how I got the job before finishing the bootcamp. But there's also key lessons I learned when actually applying. So during the application phase, key things I learned. And I think it's worth a watch in this video right here.